Hello, Switchblade Sisters Social Club. I am Rachel Holloway.
And I'm Heather Northcraft.
And we are your hosts over at the Whine Time podcast.
We're two best friends that share a passion for talking.
And with that, we decided to create our very own podcast, or momcast, if you will.
Each week, we bring mom content to each episode. The good moms, the badass moms, and our favorite, the crime moms.
You can find us at Whine Time on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Or you can find us at our Instagram or TikTok at wine_time_pod. Come check us out.
Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome!
For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesistersocialclub.com, where you can also subscribe for bonus content, or find us on Instagram and Facebook.
Hosted by the Good Wives Network. Audience discretion advised.
Hello, Switchblade Sisters Social Club. I am Rachel Holloway.
And I'm Heather Northcraft.
And we are your hosts over at the Whine Time podcast.
We're two best friends that share a passion for talking.
And with that, we decided to create our very own podcast, or momcast, if you will.
Each week, we bring mom content to each episode. The good moms, the badass moms, and our favorite, the crime moms.
You can find us at Whine Time on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Or you can find us at our Instagram or TikTok at wine_time_pod. Come check us out.
Hi! Hi! How's it going?
Hello!
Oh, so nice to speak to you.
It is so exciting. I was telling her, I'm like, we had only been talking about it for so long to finally actually make it happen.
I know, to get everyone in the same kind of place at the same time.
It's partly my fault because I wanted to delay a bit because, you know, we were doing the rebrand and everything, and we wanted to do whatever we do today under our new heading.
I was like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. And I'm the one who's like always on Instagram and emailing. So it's mainly me that's talking to either of you guys. And then I screenshot and I forward it and I'm like, you gotta stay in the loop. You need to know everything because this is the freaking most exciting thing.
I know. But you know what? We really love you guys. We really love you guys because you are so supportive of us, you know, and we really appreciate it.
You know what? That's one of like the most exciting things with social media and everything, being able to like have that tight knit community and enjoy each other's stuff. And I love when I find someone that I'm like, okay, I need to listen again and I need to listen again and I want to go back and I want to go back. And your guys' like banter and how you guys go back and forth.
Love it.
Reminds me of
oh, thank you.
So fun. Like,
oh, thank you. Because, you know, you never know if it's interesting to other people. Do you know what I mean? Because I think Dee's funny, you know.
I know, because we kept on thinking about, like, our mom who always got annoyed with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, me and my sister would always be, like, giggling in the back of the car, laughing at our jokes and stuff. And she would hate it. And so part of us was like, are other people just going to find us incredible?
Nobody else thinks we're funny.
We say the same thing all the time. Because we sit there and we go, you know what? We know you guys may not want to listen to us, but we think we're funny, so we're going to keep talking.
We have fun doing it, so screw you. But we figured everyone's got like their sister or their bestie where they have that kind of relationship where they, you know, laugh at each other's stupid jokes and big each other up and stuff. So yeah, that's what we are.
Perfect.
And just in case it's not clear from our socials or whatever, I'm Dee and that's Rhonda.
And I'm Heather.
obviously we've listened to We Knew the Moon, but we don't know like how you guys open and what you guys are going to be doing and like your episode yet, right? Because it's not posted. And it was funny because I was like, comes out February 1st. We're going to hear it before we start. We're going to get like a little preview and we're going to know.
Oh,
and
it's killing me that we have to wait. It kills me.
I know.
I'll tell you what, you commented, so you know our exciting news. We got picked up by a network. It's a lady called Fancy Michelli who, I mean, let's face it, that's just a beautiful, amazing name. So she's fantastic. She's got a background in like documentary filmmaking type stuff and research. And she got really into the Gypsy Rose case and she did a podcast on that. And then her and her team made this new network. And so we delayed our launch by a month so that we could launch on their network. Which means we'll be on like Roku and Amazon Prime and all the stuff that we don't even know about because we don't have them here in the UK, but they sound awesome.
Yeah.
Just need to pass by my nerves because the kids are in the fucking house, which I hate when I'm recording.
I sent my husband right now, he's off with my 2 daughters, a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then with her 7-year-old. And I was like, take him on a walk. Get them out.
Leave now.
Do you know what? All day I've been so nervous because kids are in the house. I never take any Zoom calls with customers or do recording when they're here because of the fucking sabotage. All day I've been telling my son, okay, 4:00, I have to work because he understands work means money, which means toys. Yeah. And as soon as it gets to 3:50, he's like, no, we're going to play a game. And I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And
our sessions have been crashed by kids. Like, I don't think we've gone we've at least half of our sessions have been crashed by one kid or another.
And sometimes
or a phone call from the school. That's happened before too.
It is what it is at that point.
Motherfuckers.
Welcome to the most amazing collaboration between WhineTime and Switchblade Sister Social Club. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Welcome, Rhonda. So excited.
Hi, girls. So go ahead and you guys start.
Long time in the making.
Yes. Long time. Yeah, please introduce yourselves. Tell our listeners a little bit about what you guys are all about.
Dee, you're the boss. You can start.
Yeah, I already started. My name's Dee, and there's my sister Rhonda joining us too. And we are launching our new podcast, Switchblade Sisters Social Club. And it is a true crime podcast where 2 sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome.
I can't wait.
I love it. You're welcome.
We are continuing a long tradition of Dee telling me horror stories to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
So it's been going on for a good almost 40 years.
We traumatize each other well and truly during our recordings, and then when we go on to edit them and rewatch them, we get re-traumatized. I don't know why we're doing this, but here we are. At
the end of every episode, I'm like, why? Why aren't we talking about the Real Housewives instead?
I know.
I just finished editing an episode where my sister was like, I'm going to have to go watch some Disney now.
Oh.
For real. There has been so many episodes where Rachel always chooses the unsolved ones to cover. And I'm like, why do you do this to me? Because when there's no ending, I'm like, and I know. Watch something to totally get my mind off of it.
Completely.
We steer clear of unsolved ones, I think, because we hate that.
Yeah, I can't. Like, Rachel, she's so good and she covers it so well. And I'm just like, Rachel, my heart can't take this anymore.
I know.
What's wrong with you? Do I have a problem?
Why do you do this to yourself and me?
Who are you?
I'm Heather.
Yeah.
And who are you?
Oh, I'm Rachel.
Oh, okay.
I'm Rachel.
Just checking.
Yeah, we're the WhineTime hosts.
We're the WhineTime
mummies. It was really funny. Like I said, I know nothing about time zones and anything like that. So it's 8 a.m, and this is Tito's vodka because I was like,
we need to do it.
Even though
I was wondering.
I'm nervous.
You know, I was wondering what you guys were drinking. I was thinking that's pretty hardcore if you're drinking alcohol in the morning.
This is Tito's vodka because we are going ham.
We are.
Wow.
You're right.
Do you know what? We've never had an episode where we've had a drink or got pissed up in an episode. Partially because I always have to do the school run afterwards. Huh? You have? Literally.
I'm drinking now, but I do it subtly in our merch.
Oh, do you know what? Because we record on Fridays.
Also, because it's cold. Yeah, you have to do the school run, but also, we're in London. It's fucking freezing at the moment.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is Irish up my coffee.
Yeah.
So I've got a nice little bit of Baileys in my coffee.
Nice.
You know I haven't been wasted.
I will do an episode once where I have a drink because it'd be funny. I'm pretty much teetotal. I haven't had a drink for years, actually. And
you're the funniest drunk.
This is Tito's vodka, and it has, what the hell is that?
I don't even know, some kind of sparkling juice that one of our friends brought over.
It's like a peach nectar.
It's really good. Mine's pretty much just Tito's with sparkling water, because I ain't about that sweet shit, but Yeah.
Cheers to having
Cheers to our collab.
Cheers.
Woo-hoo. Thank you for being
Cheers. Luck at the Irish.
At the beginning of our episode, we whine about something because that was kind of like our basis of when we created it is I'm very good at complaining about anything there is to complain about because everything in the world bothers me. So we start with that. So if you guys have something you want to whine about, I have something right now that I can whine about.
Do it.
And it is the fact, and it's funny, I made this choice, right? So I made the choice to move across the country. But what I want to whine about today is how stupid of a person I am to move across the country. Because the feeling I have right now inside of me that I'm about to see my family, who I have been missing terribly, I'm like, what kind of dumbass bitch? Why would you leave?
For love. You left for love.
That's your first mistake, loving anyone.
Seriously? Is that where we're going? No, he's in the army, so I left with him, and he's been gone for 6 months. So now I'm just
tough.
I'm alone. I'm a loner.
I know.
Oh my
but
God,
you're not
that's
gonna
hard.
How long do you have to be there?
Well, he's at school for 6 months, and then he comes home in March. So it's been since like last October that he's been gone.
But that's why it's going to be the best couple of weeks of your life upcoming because now you're here, you're going to see your family, and then you're going to go home, and next thing you know, you're going to see him, and it's gonna be awesome.
Yep, can't wait.
I can tell you what I need to learn about though.
Yeah,
we decided as 30-year-olds to make TikToks. And she has been sending me videos. When we're together, we're going to do this. And I'm like, girl, you're out of your mind. There's no way I could get my body to do that. Are you kidding? I'm 30 and 2 kids deep. Like, this is not happening. And she's sending me these, like, acrobatic dance freaking things. And I swear, my knee hurts so bad. I woke up this morning and I'm like, Rachel, what did I do to myself? In one of these videos, I somehow decided that I was back in my 20-year-old body. Yeah. And my knees could handle this kind of pressure.
Oh, so it's a TikTok dance video.
Yeah. Hilarious. It's hilarious.
Do you know how funny?
I can't wait.
Because that ties in so nicely to mine. And first of all, I should say, me and my sister are almost 10 years older than you if you girls are 30. Because I'm going to be 40 in a few weeks. Thanks. But we fucking struggle, like...
What do we struggle with?
Social media management.
I'm worried about what's coming up.
With life. My sister's social media manager. She's on it. She knows all of that stuff very well. I do a lot of it from my different jobs and whatnot. I work with charities and a bunch of other stuff. But it's such a fucking nightmare trying to keep up with everything. And as a 40-year-old, I just refuse to TikTok. I don't have the brain space.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If something goes in, now something has to come out. Because there's not enough capacity to like bring new stuff in, you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Rachel, honestly, I have a TikTok, and I don't make videos on it. All I do is literally have it to follow Whine Time TikTok because Rachel is the best at it. Literally, when she got here, I was like, okay, let's make a bunch because I'm not going to be able to make these on my own. So we need to make. She's really good at it. Me, I can't.
That's what you need. You need someone who's good on it because,
I fucking hate making reels. It is fiddly. Do you know what I mean? Once you've posted it and people like it, that's a nice feeling. But making it, for fuck's sake, you know. Yeah.
But you watch one bearded dragon video and suddenly that's all that TikTok's showing.
That's all I
You have other interests.
Yeah,
some others, you know.
That is great.
That's my wine. Yeah. Too many different new things.
Okay, so my wine is that me and Dee, we were so excited about today that we were like, let's make sure we look really good and go get some fucking Botox.
You did? We literally were just talking about this.
The lady who manages, Lucy, she's amazing. The lady who manages my doctor's surgery, she also does aesthetics, and she's like the lady who also, she used to take the blood at the surgery, so she's good. She's good at what she does. Anyway, so she has a salon set up at home, but I was like, look, it's impossible for me to get out with the kids. You can just come here and do it. So she came over yesterday. Me and Dee got some Botox. We got a little bit of work done. And then
our marionette.
Oh, yeah. We got some filler up in these faces.
You know, like a ventriloquist dummy.
Okay, but what we forgot is that you end up with fucking bruises and swelling before it looks good. So honestly, this is why we're plastered with makeup, looking like the Joker, because I got bruises up on here, bruises up in here, bruises. Like I'm wearing a fucking face full of makeup just to cover up all the bruises. So, you know, our vanity kicked us in the ass because, you know, we don't quite look as we hoped.
You guys look great. You guys look great. We went to go take a bunch of pictures yesterday. So one of our friends, she came over and she's like, I'll do your guys' makeup. And we're like, hell yeah, do our makeup. Because like, I don't do makeup. And so she did this whole thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, she did the whole like the contouring and the blush and the this and the that. And the whole time I'm like, do you see this? Do you see this? He's like, yeah, we should Botox. And I'm like, I need to because this is too much for me. And that you can't cover up with makeup.
I'll tell you what. Do you know what? I do love Botox. I started getting it for migraines because they do it here on the.
Said, no.
Yeah, and you know what? I did it 3 times. For
and
migraines.
I started getting it for. I clench my teeth at night. And you can do Botox in the jaw to relax your jaw muscles. So there are actual medicinal reasons why you might get Botox.
And
then there's the kind that we get.
Yeah, and when I got it done, well, this is the first time I've actually done it for vanity. Before that, it was for migraines. And like they like inject your scalp and your forehead and your frown lines. But the great thing about it is it does reduce your headaches because you can't strain your eyes or frown. So it really does work. It really does, especially when you're working at the computer all day. Like you can't frown, so you're literally less tense.
I love that idea so much.
Yeah. Doctors have recommended it to me for
these ones. These ones fucking hurt though, because that felt like she was going right into the skull.
Yeah,
right into the skull, didn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you've ever had periods or a child, it's really not that bad. The pain.
You can handle it. Okay, good to know. Good to know. That was going to be my next question, but there you go.
The problem is once you start, it's
that's what everyone says. Yeah.
Why would you stop? Like I'm not going to stop. I don't want to age gracefully.
All right, you guys want to get into this?
Let's do that.
Tell us a story.
When we were emailing back and forth, our podcast is a mom cast. So, it's funny. Our mom cast, your mom cast. It was funny in the email when you're like mom/mom. But I was like, okay, let's both pick a crime or something in that realm that has to do with a mom. Whether it's they are the person doing it, it happens to them, whatever it is. And so we had kind of touched on Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee Blanchard a little while ago in one of the episodes, but we knew that we wanted to cover it. And I was like, there's really nothing more American and psycho than this. And we're going to get into it.
We covered it because I did an episode where it's like, if you've been liking all the crime we covered, here's some like crime documentaries. And they have that Mommy, Dead and Dearest documentary. And this was like right when they came out. I think it was like a Hulu show or something too, where it was like they took the case and like turned it into a whole show.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if you guys are interested, like this is a wild, wild case. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, do it. Cheers. We are starting. Thank you guys. We're glad we're all here together.
Yes. So let me start. I'm going to give a little bit of like the background because there's so much background in this case, just with all of the stuff that the mom, oh my gosh. And then Rachel's going to get more into the crime. Dee Dee and Gypsy Rose Blanchard. So this case is just chock full of crime and just on a whole other level of fucked upness. And just when you think you know what's going on, there's another like twist and turn. So just a little bit of background first. So Claudine Blanchard, better known as Dee Dee, so she went by Dee Dee. People said she was very sweet. She was even said to be very generous, just a very nice person. And she was the full-time caretaker for her daughter, Gypsy Rose. And at the time that all this kind of starts going down, they lived together in Springfield, Missouri. So Gypsy Rose, she wore glasses, she used a feeding tube, and even sometimes used an oxygen tank. She was always seen in her wheelchair, confined to her wheelchair, and she often wore wigs to cover like her small balding head. The wig you most often saw her in was this like kind of blonde curly wig. And over the years, ever since she was a baby, Gypsy Rose had this long list of ailments and conditions. According to her mother, it was this just a bunch of stuff. It started with sleep apnea, muscular dystrophy, epilepsy. She had different eye problems, different brain damage problems. And at one point, when she was a toddler, her mother said she even had leukemia.
You said according to her mother, and it's like, no, created by her mother.
According to, yeah, seriously. And the leukemia is why you often saw her with a bald or shaved head. Also, according to Dee Dee, Gypsy's father was a deadbeat dad who didn't contribute to their family, didn't contribute anything for Gypsy. But that didn't stop Dee Dee and Gypsy from living in a new home that was built for them by Habitat for Humanity after they were victims of Hurricane Katrina. And it also didn't stop them from going on trips to Disney World and even meeting Miranda Lambert backstage at one of her concerts, thanks to like various charities like Make-A-Wish Foundation, that kind of thing. And also, despite Gypsy's various diagnoses, she kept a very positive attitude, and she was usually seen like smiling, nice, big, bright smile in all of the pictures. This seemed like a tragic but uplifting story of this dedicated mother and a daughter who, despite everything, was beating all the odds. A friend of the family even put it, here is this, and this is a quote from the friend, here's this poor sick child who was being taken care of by a wonderful patient mother who only wanted to help everybody. But.
Yeah.
but.
Big, can I just say, first of all, I'm taking notes. I'm so in. Just from like an outsider's, there was something so endearing as well, because they had these cute little Southern accents, you know.
Yes.
It was just like, you know, this like warm Southern family. It just added this extra layer of like cutesiness, you know, endearingness, which makes the rest of it even more fucking awful.
I know, right? Exactly.
There is something about that little, the accent and her small, sweet little voice.
Like she sounded like this. Yeah, for sure. And it draws you in. You see that, you hear their story, and you're just immediately feeling so many feelings for the two of them and what they've gone through. But obviously, we wouldn't be covering it today if there wasn't a lot more that goes into this story, right? A lot of what was happening, it all came finally bubbling to the surface when the mother, Dee Dee, is found stabbed to death in their home in June of 2014, and Gypsy Rose is nowhere to be found. The next day, and then the next day,
it shouldn't appear so excited.
Takes an even more unexpected turn when Gypsy is found a whole state away with her boyfriend. And not only is she walking on her own without a wheelchair, but her previously bald head is actually growing small spiky hair, and all of the various diagnoses and ailments that had plagued her seemingly her whole life, they disappeared.
Yeah.
They're gone. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to talk a little bit more about the early days of Dee Dee and Gypsy. So a little bit about Claudine, the mother. Like I said, she went by Dee Dee, but she actually had a lot of different kind of like aliases and names over the years. She would spell her name with like
flag.
Exactly. Yes. Huge red flag.
Always a red flag.
She would like add an E to her last name. She would go by Dee Dee. She would go by and she said she used to do this because she was trying to hide basically from her ex, but we know better. Red flag. So she was born in 1967. She grew up in Louisiana, and when she was 24 years old is when she met 17-year-old Ron Blanchard, And the two quickly got pregnant when he was 17 and she was 24. They got pregnant and then they got married and then they quickly got divorced.
Yeah.
Quelle surprise.
Yeah. To hear him put it, he literally woke up one day and was like, this ain't for me. This is not my life. And Gypsy Rose was actually born after they'd already separated in 1991. And according to her dad, according to Rod, Gypsy Rose's dad, she was completely healthy at birth. And even though him and Dee Dee separated, he still was trying to be involved in the baby's life. And but he said she was totally healthy at birth. But then when Gypsy was 3 months old, Dee Dee, who, another red flag when you hear about these cases, had previously worked as a nurse's aide, she was convinced that Dee Dee had sleep apnea. Even after she took her into the doctor, did all the tests, and all the tests told her that Gypsy was perfectly healthy. But that beginning at 3 months old was the start of like 20 years of straight up manipulation and lying and Dee Dee on a whole new level of bullshit.
This is the point where I'm still with Dee Dee in that, and my sister will concur. I don't know I kind of know what it's like in the States with your healthcare system, and it seems like it's also fucked up.
Oh, it's so fucked up.
But sometimes you do have to make a nuisance of yourself, and you do have people telling you, oh no, there's nothing, it's unlikely that it's that, blah, blah, blah.
So true.
So at this point, I'm like, maybe she knows there's something wrong, and maybe it's not sleep apnea, but maybe it's something, and she's trying to, and the doctors are like, oh no, we've tried the obvious stuff, but sometimes you do have to, what's the metaphor?
There's something going on with your baby, and you're like, no, 100%. I would totally be on the same page where it's like, no, I feel there's something wrong with my child. You're telling me there's not, but my mother's intuition is telling me there's something going on. And yeah, you'll get doctors that say, no, it's fine. Like, so no, I totally get what you're saying too.
I can kind of understand her up until round about this point, but I feel like you're about to lose
then it all just goes downhill. Wait a second.
Yeah.
So Rod eventually does get married. So Gypsy's dad eventually gets remarried to another woman, has some other children, but he still spent a lot of time with Gypsy, still contributed financially to Gypsy and everything she needed, all up until about 2004 when Gypsy was around 13 years old. So after Dee Dee and Rod had separated, Dee Dee and Gypsy actually move in with Dee Dee's father and Dee Dee's stepmother. And Dee Dee had never actually really gotten along well with her own family. And when she had moved back in with them, she started writing bad checks and committing some other kind of like misdemeanor fraud stuff. And then on top of that, Dee Dee's family started having a problem and really started expressing concern about the way that Dee Dee treated Gypsy. They kind of didn't like the way that she was treating her daughter. Eventually, Dee Dee and Gypsy just move. So they move away from Rod, Gypsy's dad, and they move away from Dee Dee's family, and they move about 2 hours north of New Orleans. And while they lived there, Dee Dee continued to take Gypsy to different medical centers, different hospitals, and she was being treated for things like muscular dystrophy and seizures. And during this time, this is also when Gypsy had a feeding tube inserted. And according to Dee Dee, all of Gypsy's problems came from a chromosomal defect that she had at birth. The sleep apnea, the muscular dystrophy, the seizures, all of this. And so she's being treated for that. She's being given medication. Like I said, she had a feeding tube inserted. And that was all when they were living about 2 hours north of New Orleans. Then in 2005, Hurricane Katrina hits. Okay. And so Dee Dee and Gypsy now have to leave. Their apartment's completely messed up from hurricane. A natural disaster, add that to our fucked up healthcare system. That would be a struggle. That would totally be a struggle. So they're bouncing from place to place, trying to find a good place. That they started actually at a special needs shelter in Louisiana. A doctor who was actually there said, you guys should move up to the Missouri area. So they actually started renting a house in Aurora, Missouri. And then eventually they were able to move into their Springfield house when it was built by, like I said, Habitat for Humanity in 2008. Now, once they're settled in Missouri, Gypsy's quote-unquote medical problems continued. So Dee Dee claimed that all of Gypsy's medical records had been destroyed in Katrina, which makes sense. It makes sense that some of them would have been destroyed, but I mean, this is like, 2005. There are still digital records, but because she said everything was lost in Katrina, she now has almost free reign to quote unquote treat Gypsy for all of her issues. Gypsy is now being treated for hearing issues, for vision issues, and this is including surgeries. So Gypsy's actually getting eye surgeries, multiple eye surgeries, and this part is just so, Dee Dee actually has Gypsy's salivary glands removed because she says that due to the muscular dystrophy, Gypsy drools too much. So her salivary glands are removed. I didn't even know that was a thing. Oh my gosh.
I get that, her records would have been destroyed, potentially, that, that could possibly happen. But how did they not do, preliminary tests?
Dee Dee was a master manipulator. And because she had been a nurse's aide, she had a really good knack for remembering a lot of this, medical terminology and spouting out things like, oh, da-da-da-da-da, and symptoms. What Dee Dee did is they moved from place to place to place. So she was seeing new doctors, new people. So she could kind of just give all this BS and they would take it.
And she probably moved on the minute anyone started questioning her, right?
Exactly,
Now's the time.
Because that's exactly what happened. During the course of this, there was only one time that a doctor was like, excuse me, let's look at this. And he actually started digging into all of these things. And there was only one doctor this entire time that was like, no. And yeah, she just stopped seeing him. She just stopped going to him. And she was telling everyone he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they can't get comments from a lot of these doctors because obviously they know I fucked up when I just let this woman tell me how to do my job. But it got to the point where they even had Gypsy Rose's teeth extracted because they had rotted so much and she's using a feeding tube and it was so bad. But like I said, there was only one doctor who called out all these inconsistencies. He basically wrote a note that said, and we'll talk about it a little bit. It's called Munchausen's by proxy, right? We covered this in one of our, I think on our very first episode. And he wrote that in a note. This looks like Munchausen's by proxy. And Dee Dee he doesn't know what he's talking about and goes and sees a different doctor. He did say when I would talk about this to other doctors, other people they were seeing, no one wanted to believe me. No one wanted to believe me. And he said he just wasn't going to keep pushing when everyone around him was basically saying, no, they're fabulous. They're great.
Look at her.
Look at her. Yeah. But that just goes to show, I mean, these are doctors, right? These are people who've gone to school and are supposed to know. And that just goes to show how good of a manipulator Dee Dee was. The other thing that she was really able to do is get that money.
You already told us she got a freaking house.
I know, she got a freaking house. She got trips to Disney World. And
you see this kind of stuff a lot, actually. And one of the things that it makes me think of is TikTok again. But I saw that this person had created a GoFundMe account, put a breathing tube, and made it look like they were going through something. Well, they found out that it was all fake, but she had got over $1 million off of TikTok.
Yeah.
And it was all fake.
Scams.
And that person had to give it all back. And, that's a crime. So she is facing whatever she needs to face. But the fact that you can get away with certain things like this and manipulate these people.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's so hard because it really just makes it that much harder for people who are actually going through shit to get the stuff that they need. Yeah. So during this whole time, even though Dee Dee had told people that Gypsy Rose's dad was a deadbeat who didn't contribute everything, he was still sending them child support. He was still sending them money. And he would even, if they would be like, oh, Gypsy wants a new TV, Gypsy wants this, Gypsy wants a new computer, he'd buy it, he'd send it. He was totally supportive of them, even when they moved further away from this. And this continued even after Gypsy turned 18. He was still contributing. And actually on Gypsy's 18th birthday, he calls to wish her a happy birthday. And Dee Dee tells him, and again, this manipulation is just on a whole other level. Dee Dee tells Gypsy Rose's dad, don't tell her that she's 18. And he's like, what do you mean don't tell her she's 18? And she says, well, because she thinks she's only 14.
Remember that she was lying about her age. Ooh.
Exactly. And not only was she telling people, oh, Gypsy thinks she's only 14, blah, blah, blah. What she ends up doing is, because all of the documentation was lost in Hurricane Katrina, she actually is able to get a birth certificate that says that Gypsy Rose is born in 95 instead of 91. The family knows. Like, the dad knows what year the child was born. So to get past that hump, she just says, oh, she thinks she's 14, so don't confuse her.
How is that even possible?
I'm surprised by all the negligence of all, like, the agencies involved. You know?
Yes! So many people not bothering to double check it. And it's like, yeah, sure, you've got this mother who's like, oh, you know, and you feel you have the sympathy. All your stuff was lost in Hurricane Katrina. You're dealing with, you know, everything you're dealing with at home. You blah, 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 blah. You still need to, like, do your stuff. But because she got a birth certificate that now made Gypsy look 4 years younger than she actually was, they were able to continue taking advantage of a lot of the charities that are specifically for children. Negligence on so many people's part. All of, like, the doctors, all of the people that she was scamming, like, they were just seeing the outside and just took it at face value and didn't dig into any of this.
And I presume she must have had some kind of, like, social workers along the way as well, or whatever. But it's so sad, because in cases like this of child abuse, because that's 100% what it is at this point, there's so many opportunities for them to usually, you know, so many missed opportunities, right? And this is another one.
So many missed opportunities. And that's so true. So there was another time where someone did report to the authorities that they thought something was going on. So there was this one doctor who tried to tell people weren't listening. And then there was like a neighbor or like a family friend who tried to report and say, hey, we think something's going on. We don't think that this is right. And the cops actually go to the house to do like a welfare check. But again, Dee Dee is this master manipulator. She's able to convince them, no, look, Gypsy, you know, she's got all of these conditions. She's got all these problems. The reason we have documentation that may say different names or different birthdays is because we're trying to hide, like we're trying to quote unquote hide from Gypsy's dad because he tries to follow us. And she was able to do it. And the cops were like, okay.
It's such bullshit.
After all was said and done, they were like, Gypsy, why didn't you just stand up and walk? Like, that would have shut the whole thing down, right? But then you're asking the victim of this abuse to go against their lifelong abuser. And she was like, I was too scared of what might happen. But you think about that all the time. Had she just stood up and walked across the room one day?
You know, the thing is, Gypsy is still like a kid, and she obviously thinks it's her mother and has trust in her. And then, you know, maybe there's the whole Stockholm Syndrome element to it as well.
100%, yeah.
And she probably doesn't know herself how sick she is.
That's why you see Gypsy, she always had this very close...
Yeah, she was always like
where
this.
She had to be holding her, and she would squeeze her hand, and she would hold on to her, and she would be physically able to kind of correct any kind of like misstep that she would make.
Yeah. What she would say is like, oh, if I would be talking and my mom was holding my hand and I started to say something that my mom didn't want me to say, she'd squeeze my hand to let me know, like, basically stop talking, shut up. The same way that Dee Dee is like manipulating the whole world, she's manipulating and abusing and completely Gypsy, like 10 times more. But despite all of that, as Gypsy is entering into young adulthood, even though her mom is telling her and a lot of her documents say that she's only like 14, 15, when she's starting to be like 18, 19 years old, she does start using the internet. She starts using social media. She gets in Facebook and she starts having contact with the outside world where previously she was so isolated, right? She was just living with just her mom. And anytime they would go out in public, she was with her mom. But now she's got the internet and she's got Facebook and she's able to start branching out. In 2010, when she was like 18 or 19 in real life, but her mom was telling everyone, and she also did think for a while, because her mom was telling her too that she was younger, she actually asked a neighbor for a ride to see a man that she had met on the internet. But Dee Dee found out, scrapped it, made a scene, pulled Gypsy back home, and obviously was like, don't do that. But then again, in February 2011, Gypsy actually tries to escape. She tries to run away. So she had met this man who was 35 years old. She met him at like a sci-fi convention. They start talking online. And then the man actually takes Gypsy back to his hotel room. A concerned neighbor friend saw this all kind of go down, and Dee Dee shows up at the hotel room banging on his door and shows like documentation to say, hey, she's 14, 15, like you're committing felony. And the guy's like, okay, whatever. And then Dee Dee takes Gypsy home. And after this, it's so sad. So Dee Dee actually, she smashes the computer. She smashes Gypsy's cell phone. You know, she's like, you're not allowed to do this anymore. And she allegedly chained Gypsy to a bed for 2 weeks as punishment. Oof. Just absolute abuse, just on a whole other level. And eventually, though, she did let Gypsy start using the computer again and start using the internet again. But she was like, only with my supervision are you allowed to do this.
I was wondering why she would let her in the first place, but I guess because Dee Dee seemed to like need the attention, the fame, etc.
Exactly.
Like social media actually plays nicely into that, right?
Oh, big time. Exactly. Because they had a joint Facebook account where they were able to like, oh, look, and yes, that's exactly 100% it. But this didn't stop Gypsy, though, from using the internet and her Facebook and stuff after her mom would go to sleep. So she had secret Facebook accounts her mom didn't know about. And she also made a profile on a Christian dating site.
I mean, bless her, she's just trying to be a normal girl, isn't she?
Being a normal girl in her early adult years, she's 18, 19 at this point. She's allowed to do this, right? And that's how in 2012, that's when she met and started talking to Nicholas Godejohn. By this time, I think Gypsy was like in her early 20s, and he was 23, I think, at the time that they started talking. A little bit about Nicholas. He's from Wisconsin, so like a state over. He says that the reason he was on the Christian dating site is because he was also trying to meet a girl because he had autism, and he said that, I mean, the American school system's pretty fucked. They had put him in special education, even though he's like, I was the smartest kid in my class, but socially it was hard for me. And so he wasn't able to meet a lot of friends or women that way. So he had a really big online presence as well. And to hear him tell it, he also had multiple personalities, or like he kind of called them alter egos. And one of them was a very violent and aggressive alter ego. He has also been ostracized his whole life. He's trying to reach out. They're trying to find connection wherever they can. The two quickly become boyfriend and girlfriend. They're talking like all the time online. Sometimes, though, Gypsy has to go like radio silent if she feels like her mom is like catching on. And sometimes he said like she wouldn't be online for a couple days or a couple weeks. They plan to get married. They picked out what their kid's name was going to be.
Remember that age, everything was so romantic, and the obstacles were like, oh, we're Romeo and Juliet.
Right, 100%. And like a lot of young adults their age, they were definitely sexing it up online. The two actually ended up creating this really in-depth fantasy life online with multiple characters and different names and personalities that would like kind of like match up with their alter egos, and they'd like pair them up together. And they talked a lot about sex. They even like sent sexy pictures to each other. they were definitely into some like BDSM role-playing type stuff. And a lot of this came out in their online communications and sending pictures to each other and that kind of thing. This goes on for years. For a couple of years, you are creating this like fairy tale fantasy.
And Dee Dee never found out?
Dee Dee never found out. Gypsy has watched her mother lie and manipulate and control people her whole life. And now the student has become the master.
Yes.
Like, Gypsy knows what she's doing. Gypsy knew that her mom would not approve of their relationship. So they kept it secret. And then finally, like 2-3 years after, in 2015, they're planning this whole meet cute. They're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have it to where Nicholas meets Dee Dee for the first time, and Dee Dee's going to love him and think he's great, and then we're all going to live happily ever after. So what they plan to do is Dee Dee and Gypsy were going to go to a movie. Nicholas literally takes a bus all the way from Wisconsin to Missouri, and he shows up at this movie and tries to basically like casually say hi. So he casually like introduces himself to Dee Dee, sees Gypsy like, oh, hey, how are you? And they sit next to each other in the movie theater. Just by pure coincidence, they're sitting next to each other in the movie theater. And Nicholas is supposed to like make this good impression on Dee Dee, and it's supposed to all work out. So he introduces himself to Dee Dee, introduces himself to Gypsy. They sit at the movie theater. Dee Dee, though, basically thought he was creepy.
Our mom, if someone came up and tried to like hang out with us if we're like on a mother-daughter outing, she'd be like...
Right. So to hear Nicholas tell it, they sat next to each other at the movies, and Dee Dee actually was like, we're moving, and moved, but Gypsy stayed.
Oh my God.
So they watched this whole movie, and he says it was so romantic because anytime they would kiss in the movie, like they would kiss, and they were holding hands the whole time. And for them, it was the best thing ever. For Dee Dee, she's like, who's this creeper? Like, I do not like this guy. And Dee Dee noticed, right, that Gypsy was paying attention to him and didn't like it. But that didn't stop these two from going to a bathroom during the movie and having sex in the bathroom.
Oh, no, I don't remember this detail.
Yeah. So according to both Dee Dee and Nicholas...
Where was Dee Dee?
Just sitting in the movie?
Yeah, sitting in the
fucking
movie.
watching Cinderella?
So Dee Dee's in the movie watching Cinderella. Nicholas and Gypsy sneak out, basically, and have sex in the bathroom. And according to both Nicholas and Gypsy, this is how Gypsy lost her virginity. Dee Dee's just
hold up. Was it Cinderella they were seeing?
Yeah. It was Cinderella!
Yes.
That makes it worse. I don't know.
It was the live-action Cinderella, right?
They say that because that was one of Dee Dee's things when seeing him and meeting him there that night was like, why is this grown-ass dude at a Cinderella movie by himself, all of a sudden putting himself onto my daughter?
Yeah.
Like, everything was...
creepy.
Yes.
I'm surprised she let them like leave at the same time.
I know.
You know, it feels
they
like
must have just been able to... I don't know, maybe Dee Dee really liked Cinderella. Maybe she fell asleep. But yeah, it's shocking. But regardless, after this, Dee Dee's like, no. Like, stay away from him. Basically told him, we don't like him, stay away from him. So that's where now Rachel is going to take over. Because now, all of this is starting to come to a head.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's already so fucking wild. It's already just...
It is insane. And so that is the background of what is going on. And now we hit the point where Dee Dee's going to interfere in between Gypsy and Go to John. And she's going to tell them, no, you guys can't be together. And that is not something that they are willing to accept. That is not something that they are going to be okay with. So they come up with their plan B. And I will say plan B, trigger warning for whoever needs it, because we get into the craziness. Plan B is literally Gypsy straight up asking Nick to kill her mother for her.
That escalates fast.
It does. Well, they have been talking for so long. They have known each other for so long. And it's very sad that when you look at it in a certain way of Gypsy trying to have him meet her and trying to do it a certain way where they introduce each other and see each other, it doesn't happen. And when you've been abused and neglected and treated this way this whole time, yeah, it's crazy.
So did Gypsy Rose have any conditions? I mean, I assume trauma from all of this.
I want to
did she
say
have any
Trauma for
conditions?
sure.
Yeah.
Trauma for
But
sure.
I believe, so what ended up actually happening with all of that is the fact that she was being treated for these things she didn't have, which created other issues.
Yeah.
If you're putting all of these things in your body that you don't need, they are going to create other symptoms in your body. So she did start to have these things happen to her. And if she didn't take them,
Yeah.
she would have been fine. It does escalate. We are getting right into it because they work out this plan, ultimately deciding that Nick was going to come back to Springfield on June 12th of 2015, and they were going to wait for Dee Dee to go to sleep. And as soon as she was going to go to sleep, their plan was he was going to stab her to death. And that's exactly what happens. So after Dee Dee had taken her sleeping pills, and that's what I was wondering about the movie is like, did she fucking fall asleep in the
Maybe
movie?
she
Because
did.
how in the world would you
Not
let your
nice.
child? There would be no way. So I think she had to have been asleep. She took her sleeping pills. She went to bed. Gypsy ended up texting Nick that it was time. And Nick came into the house. Gypsy let him in and she gave him the knife. Then she went to hide in the bathroom. She went in there and Nick went to the bedroom and basically jumped on Dee Dee, who was asleep in bed, and started stabbing her to death. According to him, Dee Dee asked who he was. Who are you? Why are you here? She ends up calling out Gypsy's name, screaming for her. And she does, like, in the documentary, Gypsy says, like, and it's so sad seeing her face and how hurt she is by all of this. But she gets quiet and the interview person says, did she scream? And she just looks down and she's like, yeah, she heard everything. She was in that bathroom and she heard everything. So she was hiding in the bathroom and could hear everything that was happening. After Nicholas was finished, he went to find Gypsy and the two of them decided to have sex in the bathroom. What is going on?
Before or after he killed the mother?
After. Like right after.
Wow.
After. So he ships the weapon, the knife, to Wisconsin where he lived.
What they thought was if we bring the knife with us, if we leave the knife there, it's evidence.
Right.
If we bring the knife with us in the bus, we could get caught with a knife. So they decided, let's ship it from Dee Dee's, Dee Dee and Gypsy's house to his house in Wisconsin. Yeah.
So the next day, June 14th, a post from Dee Dee and Gypsy's joint Facebook account read, that bitch is dead. And then a second post then read, I hate reading this. I effing slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter. Her scream was so effing loud. LOL. No, like fucking don't write that.
Why did he write that?
What it came down to is Gypsy wanted to post something on Facebook because she felt bad and wanted her mom's body to be found. So she's like, let's post something on Facebook.
That's
and
not
I
it.
think, though, I know that's not it.
So
But then
Gypsy wrote that.
Well,
No, he
Gypsy's
didn't.
idea was to post something on Facebook. He's the one, though, that said what to write. Yeah.
All of it is fucked.
They are
I mean,
fucking stupid.
they are
They're-
so fucking
yeah.
stupid. One of the things that stuck with me in the documentary, which I hate that it stuck with me, is they post, the real videos of everything that's going on. I remember when they're in the hotel after they have left.
Oh, my God.
And they're in this hotel room and she's sitting next to him. They're in bed, apparently doing whatever they're doing, laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
Having the best time, laughing hysterically. And she eventually says, like, we just killed her, she's dead, and now he's gonna eat me. And I'm like, what the
It's
fuck?
so fucked up.
Like, what in the world?
They are basically, like, reveling in the fact
Yes.
that they...
Like Mickey and Mallory Knox.
She's free for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, I keep wanting to think of her as the victim because she's somebody who's had a lifetime of abuse, but she's not helping herself with the joyous moments
the murder.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's really sad when you think about it because it's like, enough is enough. None of that should have been happening. But to look so happy and in the moment and
like,
just,
I mean, like, you're like, you're for the first time you're free. But on the other hand, there should still be a certain level of guilt. You just killed someone and that someone was your mother. You can be happy that you're free, but don't like gloat about the fact that you just killed someone, basically. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's why I was wondering, is it just trauma or is there something else there? Psychologically, neurologically.
He was definitely going through some shit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But friends and family, they see this post from their page because remember it was from the Dee Dee and Gypsy's Facebook page. So they see this and they spring into action and they go to check on her. They had tried calling, no one, she's not answering, and they drove over to the house. No one answered the door, and after knocking, the car was in the driveway. They called the police, and the police, they did have to get a warrant before entering the house, but a friend showed up. They actually climbed through a window and did a quick scan of the house, not seeing any sign of struggle or noticing anything, but she did see that Gypsy's wheelchair was still in the house, which made them very concerned for, where's Gypsy? And also, how is her wheelchair still here? Mm-hmm. So they had thought that they kidnapped her. After the warrant finally came through and the police went in, that's when they found Dee Dee's body in the bedroom, but no sign of Gypsy. Mm-hmm. Also, I'm sorry, if the friend went through the window, how do you not just keep searching?
I know.
Maybe, I don't know. That's very wild. Open the door.
I'm guessing that their main concern, like you say, was Gypsy, though. It's still weird, but it's not the weirdest thing we've heard so far.
Yeah, I know. That's the truth, right?
It's not. A friend of Gypsy's told the police that Gypsy had this secret online boyfriend. And they ended up tracing the IP address of that Facebook post. And they tracked them to Nicholas Godejohn's house in Wisconsin. It was not long after they tracked that IP address that they showed up. SWAT team descended on the house in Wisconsin. The authorities, they called into the house. It wasn't long before Gypsy Rose just came out of the house, just walking on her own. And, they probably don't even know the extent of anything. They don't know, like, oh, wait, that girl was in a wheelchair and now she's all of a sudden walking because they're not
familiar.
This, what I mean? Everything starts to unfold from that point. We talk about it actually in the first episode when Heather did, like we said earlier, covered Mary Beth Tinning and Munchausen by proxy. This was a severe case of this. Can we agree on that? Because I feel like, yes, everything she was doing, you know how to explain it better, for people that don't know.
So basically Munchausen's by proxy. So Munchausen's would be if someone was making up symptoms or making up things within themselves to get attention and to kind of, they feed off of that attention. Munchausen's by proxy is when you do it to somebody else. Right. So a lot of the times, unfortunately, it's not, it can be like a father to a son or an adult child taking care of an older parent or something like that. But a lot of the ones that you see is a mother and a child. So in Munchausen's by proxy, it's a red flag when you see this. A lot of times this happens and the mother has a background in the medical field. So remember, Dee Dee was a nurse.
Oh my God. Like Kathy Bates in
Misery. You need to know the lingo.
Yes, that's exactly it. Oh my God, that's so true. And when I covered Mary Beth Tinning, the same thing. She had a background in the medical field. So, but basically, someone with Munchausen's by proxy, they fabricate these symptoms, they fabricate all of these diagnoses in order to get sympathy and attention, and they feed off of the attention. Yeah. I think not only was it that for Dee Dee, but there's also, she has a history of fraud, right? She was writing bad checks, committing some other misdemeanor fraud. So, I think she was also, a big part of it was obviously the attention and sympathy she would get from people, but I think she also liked the fact that she could get monetary
financial gain.
Definitely.
Yeah. After all of that, Nicholas and Gypsy were taken into custody and the investigator started questioning both of them. And at first they did try to cover it up. They did try to downplay the murder, but it quickly came to light that this was their plan. This is what they had planned to do all along. With that, as well as the online communication that was being unearthed by the authorities, because they dig into all of that and they get to see everything that they're sending back and forth and how this kind of plan came to light. It was clear that Gypsy had come up with the idea to murder her mother, and Nicholas was the willing participant. It was her idea to post the Facebook messages because she wanted her mom's body to be found. Both Gypsy and Nicholas were charged with first-degree murder. At first, Nicholas's lawyers wanted to argue for diminished capacity because of his autism and his low IQ. But eventually, his case went to trial. Gypsy actually testified at his trial. It was her idea to kill Dee Dee. And she also testified to their previous online fantasy life and BDSM tendency. That plays such a big part because if you are living in this
fantasy life.
Yeah. And unfortunately, so many people do. They have these different things, which is okay to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But when it becomes so real to you, so taking over everything, and you think that you can do stuff like this,
when you're crossing that line between what's fantasy and role play and real life
and
definitely.
Consensual
and exactly. Exactly.
But the thing is, Gypsy Rose spent her whole life not knowing what's true and what's not true. She literally does not know the difference between fantasy and reality because of her mom. So I can totally imagine how she would just be like, oh, maybe we should just kill her. And then they're just like kind of creating these scenarios where they kill her. And then they're like, well, fuck it. Shall we do it? They're almost like playing chicken with each other. At what point do we say, we're just joking, right? But she just was told to lie her whole life about things. No wonder she's disassociated from reality.
And one thing that we talk about a lot in some of our episodes is at what point the victim becomes the aggressor. Like, what's the turning point where they stop being the victim? Well, they probably never stop being the victim because what happened to them happened to them. But, like, Gypsy Rose, she turned on her aggressor, basically, almost like self-defense. And then even, the boyfriend, he's autistic, and autistic people can be prone to being vulnerable. And it is a generalization because not all autistic people are prone to vulnerability at all. Right. But at what point was he still the victim in all this, being dragged into something and being... Is that ever sort of mentioned that was he a vulnerable guy who was manipulated himself?
He was so manipulated. And I think it goes back to the idea that Gypsy saw her mom manipulating people and getting what she wanted from people her whole life. Gypsy knew what to do. And I think part of Gypsy was trying to find connection to the outside world. But then part of Gypsy saw that Nicholas loved her. He loved her so much, and he said he would do anything for her. I definitely think it's fair to argue that Gypsy knew what she was doing and manipulated Nick into doing this. Like, she's the one who asked him to do it. I don't know if he ever would have come up with the idea on his own, right?
Because loyalty and vulnerability are autistic traits.
With all of that said, he was found guilty in 2018 of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life without parole. As for Gypsy, in preparation for her trial, Gypsy's lawyers dug into Dee Dee's past and started finding all the evidence of the abuse that Gypsy had endured over all of those years. And they eventually worked out a plea deal, and in July of 2016, Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder, and she received the minimum sentence of 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah, for murder.
Well, it's almost up, too, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But those involved saw the years-long abuse as a mitigating factor in the murder of her mother. Gypsy is actually eligible for parole this year in 2023. So we are going to eventually be touching on all of that.
We're going to see this come back by the end of the year. We'll see this pop up.
Apparently, her health has been good while in prison. She even said she feels freer in prison than she did when she was with her mother. Her father and stepmother regularly contact and visit Gypsy. And as of last year, Gypsy actually got married. She is a married woman account, yes. She had all these suitors.
She had
all these
She
people.
had men on men on men in prison.
She was engaged before this, and then they stopped, but she's actually married from someone
We
she
did an
met.
episode on that, didn't we? Hybristophilia, people who
I'm like,
love prisoners.
Yeah. That's it. That is the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Do you know what? I forgot a lot of those details. Like, I really just knew that Gypsy was abused, and then either she or the boyfriend killed the mother, but I forgot all the details. I saw it when it came out, that documentary. But wow, I mean, it's just so complex because
it's this perfect storm of those three characters.
Those two were not born killers.
Exactly.
The boyfriend was manipulated into a situation. Maybe he had tendencies already that needed to be, that he needed help for. But Gypsy, had she been born into a different life with different parents, raised by the dad instead of the mother, probably wouldn't be in the situation she's in,
I agree.
It's awful to think about how different things could have been if doctors did what they were supposed to do. If people stepped in where they were supposed to step in, this wouldn't have gotten this far.
Yeah. So many of these cases deal with people who have been failed, who had traumatic upbringings, or the system failed them, education failed them, family failed them, healthcare failed them. And it just actually brings up all those questions about the whole system. That's a fucking story and a half.
The more I got into it, I was like, dang, that is so much more detail than I remember.
Do you want to traumatize yourself further? Have a little Google for the text message exchanges between Nicholas and Gypsy Rose.
Yeah.
Did you see any of them?
Yeah.
Oh,
I refuse. I heard some of them read back and forth on one of the things I watched. I think was like Snapped. I heard some of them being read back and forth, and I was like, oh my gosh, chills! Like, this is crazy.
I know it's one of the most disturbing things because they go between being like such naive. She goes between being like such a naive young woman, talking to her beau and stuff, and to talking about this like sexting basically about BDSM stuff, and then talking about killing the mom, and they just flip between those. So easily.
My gosh.
It's just bonkers. So, well, thank you, ladies, for giving us an hour in advance.
We made it.
We did it. Now we want to hear
you are great storytellers.
Shall we?
Yes.
Go for it.
So me and my sister, we discussed, combining the themes of our podcasts, yours being the topic of mums and ours being exploiting our worst fears. When we came up with the worst fears for mothers, we were like, eek, because our first thought went to sort of child murders. And we always find that topic really, really tough. And we cover it sometimes, but we really struggle. So we decided to go down a slightly different road. So we went down the road of parricide. So first thing, pop quiz. Do you know what parricide is?
No.
Well, I'm going to tell you what the difference is between patricide and parricide.
Okay.
So patricide is the killing of one's father, and parricide is the killing of a parent or close relative. So patricide is only killing the dads, and parricide is killing either parent or a sibling or maybe an aunt or uncle type thing. Or
so we're on theme today. We're on theme.
We thought it would be a little bit more lighthearted if we didn't talk about the kids being killed, but rather doing the killing. Kind of like yours. Yeah. So the Gypsy Road case is a perfect example of parricide in that they killed the mother. But both are defined as deliberate killing. So it's not an accident. It's intentional, therefore murder. I'm going to cover a bit of the background about parricide, and then my sister's going to go and do a little bit of a deep dive into a specific case for you guys. I wanted to look specifically at children who killed their parents, and specifically adult children who killed their mothers. So again, keep that Gypsy Rose case in your mind. We always quote our sources. So our sources are Psychology Today. They had an amazing article, as well as a Guardian article called Britain's Hidden Abuse. There were loads of anecdotes in these publications of parents struggling to get support for their children who are verbally and physically abusive to them. So this is where it's different from Gypsy Rose, because that girl was the victim of abuse, and that mom created that environment where the murder happened. There are sadly a lot of cases of children and then grown-up children being abusive towards their parents and the parents struggling. I'm not saying they were perfect parents, but They weren't Dee Dee fucking bitch face.
Yeah.
There's a stigma attached to it when parents struggle with their kids, however minor. You know, even if you've got a kid crying in the coffee shop, people are giving the mother stink eye, like, why don't you shut your kid up? A lot of judgment towards women about every element of child rearing and so forth. There's this assumption that adults that behave badly, especially to their own parents, it's as a result of bad parenting. Abuse in the home is definitely a gendered crime, in that it's most often male perpetrators and female victims. We know this from domestic violence. We know this with abusive parents and also abuse of children. Not saying it doesn't happen the other way around, but the majority of the time it is a female victim and a male perpetrator. So here's an interesting / horrifying fact.
Oy.
Younger women are more likely to be killed by their partners or their ex-partners. We know this. We love women and we love true crime. But women over 60 are more likely to be killed by their sons and grandsons.
No.
Wow.
While you're young, you have to worry
No break.
about yourself, and then as you get older, now you have to worry about your kid. Like, women are just, what the hell?
I can't remember where I heard it. I think it was on a TED Talk or something, but I remember it was a study where women and men were asked what they're most afraid of the opposite sex, and men said that they were most afraid of women laughing at them, and women said they were most afraid of men murdering them.
Yep.
Puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit, right?
When a father is killed, so when it's patricide, it's usually by a son. The dad tends to be younger, and the son tends to be in his teens. So this whole scenario tends to happen earlier, and it's normally because the son finds his home life, in quotation marks, intolerable, and like he doesn't have any other options. And these cases of mothers being killed by their offsprings, this is terrifying. These stats are just for the UK, but I feel like whatever's happening in the States, in the UK, it's always happening 10 times worse in the States.
In the States.
We don't have guns in the same way as you guys do. I don't know how any of you sleep at night with all of those guns floating around.
No, we don't.
Or go and work in a school.
Oh, I know.
Ugh.
I know.
I really feel for anyone that has to live with that level of fear. And I could totally understand how it escalates, where you're so scared for yourself and your family that you then resort to getting a gun, and then it just,
like, a never-ending
it just spirals. Right. So these cases of mothers being killed by their offspring, they tend to be older children, so adult children killing the mothers. And this has been on the rise since 2016, after decades of remaining stable.
Wow.
The number of grandmothers killed by their grandchildren is also on the rise.
What?
So, are you having nightmares yet?
Yes.
Don't
What
love
happened?
anyone ever.
Yeah, seriously.
Right, well, I'll tell you a little bit. So, we have something in the UK, which is amazing. It's called the Femicide Census. I mean, it's shit that it exists, but it's an amazing resource. It was started by these legends, Clary O'Callaghan and Karen Ingala Smith. It's a record of every woman killed by a man in England and Wales. Because they wanted to keep an eye on it. Like, how many women are being killed by people they know, and in what context, and so forth. Like, we need to know this shit to be able to protect ourselves against this shit, right?
Yeah.
So here are some of the terrifying stats that have come out of this femicide census. Between 2009 and 2018, what percentage of women killed by men do you think are mothers killed by their sons?
No, I feel like my number is going to be so drastically off, but I'm going to say 20%.
I was going to say 20.
I beat you.
Oh, I hope it's less than that. I'm going to go
Yeah,
less.
I
I
know.
hope it's 7.
But I know it's more. These stats are never good.
I mean, we want it to be 0, but it's clearly not.
Right.
We wouldn't be having this as a topic. All right, well, I'll tell you, 8%. I don't know if I ever thought what that number would be, but I was shocked by this number, right? That's 109 out of 1,435. I just want to remind you, this is England and Wales, and this is between 2009 and 2018. What do you think the percentage is now, though?
Higher? Is it
Oh,
higher?
you're higher.
13.
Okay, that's close. It's in 2020, so a couple of years ago, it was at 15%.
Oh my
which
God.
is almost double the previous decade. And we've not even started lockdown at this point. So in the same decade, so that's between 2009 and 2018, 11 grandmothers were killed by their grandsons. Yet in 2020 alone, 5 grandmothers had been killed by their grandsons. So in 1 year, it was 5. And the previous decade, it was 11. You could see the escalation in the numbers there. And if you extrapolate those figures over an entire decade, the figure is going to be infinitely higher over this decade. I really hate this next fact. But in one study of parricide, 77% of the sons were mentally ill. And in many cases, the mum was their carer. Interesting in that that's kind of a bit Gypsy Rose-ish as well.
Yeah.
In that she was the carer. I mean, Gypsy Rose didn't really need a carer, but that codependent relationship almost must put some kind of extra pressure or something. Safeguarding procedures are often not followed when it is the mum that is the victim of violence in the household. So there's cases of notes on the record not to leave female social workers alone with specific men, but there's no regard of the mothers that have to go home.
The mom is there.
There's also cases of mums reporting that they are scared of their sons with evidence of domestic violence, and it's taken no further. We, of course, hear this as well between partners, but it seems to be even harder to get any action on it if it's a son and a mother.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe it's because people find it so unbelievable that your kids could be a threat to you.
Right.
These women are living in daily fear.
Right.
So why are the rates rising? Well, that fucker COVID again. You know, it's a combination of rising mental health issues, isolation, lack of support, the housing crisis, cuts in social care, cuts in education, cost of living crisis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to that, I say, fuck the Tories. They are making cuts to all of these things and then wondering why everyone's struggling and resorting to behaviors that, you know, survival behaviors in a lot of cases.
We are living in a dystopian world.
Yep.
So who commits these crimes? Apparently there's 3 different types of people who commit parricide. It's predominantly male.
Right.
But the first kind is the abused child. So, Gypsy Rose.
Gypsy Rose, yeah.
Secondly, the mentally ill child. I'm going to say Gypsy Rose again because there's no fucking way she went through what she did without becoming mentally ill.
Right.
So and number 3, the antisocial child. Which again, Gypsy Rose, because like her mom kept her isolated for so fucking long. Type 1 is the most common. So 90% of adults who are adolescent parricide offenders are abused. And normally it's a combination of the 3. But what about the adults, though? The adult offspring that kill their parents, it's also quite often the motivation is financial gain. So you'll hear about it for inheritance and so forth.
Which we cover all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Dr. Amanda Holt, one of my new girl crushes, she's in the criminology department at the University of Roehampton, which we shout out because that's where Rhonda trained to be a teacher. She wrote a piece for an organization called PEGS, which is Parental Education Growth Support. She basically wrote on the first report of parricide in England and Wales, which came out October 2021. She asks, how common is it? I'm going to fuck you guys right up with this, okay?
Oh, God.
As we said before, the statistics are terrifying, right? Between 1977 and 2012, so we're not even covering the recent rise in the escalation in the rates. Between 1977 and 2012, there was an average of 19 cases a year where one or both parents were killed by their offspring, which means that at least one parent is killed every 19 days in England and Wales.
Ow.
Every 19 days.
Gosh.
Can you think of any other crime? If it happened every 19 days, people would be like, hang on, we need to take a look at this fucking shit, right? Yeah, this is something I did not know. I had no idea about any of these stats when I looked into it. I just thought the cases that we cover are one-offs, very rare.
Right.
Now I'm going to hand over to my dear sister, who I will never commit parricide on, and ask her to delve deeper into a specific case while I go and cry a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know this was as big a thing until Dee said we're going to look into this topic. But basically, I'm going to tell you about the story of Lee Tipping. Lee Tipping is the aggressor in this. So let me start at the beginning. So on Friday, November 19th, 2021, 57-year-old Trisha spent the evening at the pub with her husband, Anthony Tipping, who was 60. And she was also with her sister, Catherine Riding, and Catherine's husband, Martin. And it was like a regular arrangement for them both couples to go out and have weekly drinks together. So Trisha told her sister she didn't want to go home that night because her only child, her son Lee, had recently been acting up. Lee was 36 at the time. So Catherine, the sister, offered to let Trisha, Lee's mother, stay the night, but Trisha turned her down and returned home with her husband Anthony. She texted Catherine, her sister, to let her know that she'd arrived home safe and added that Lee was being, quote unquote, a fucking shit. Yeah. At first I was like, what kind of mother says that? You know? But anyway.
Sorry.
Then as the story develops...
I remember the first time my mom called me a little shit. But in her defense, I fucking deserved it. I wasn't a little shit.
So a few minutes later, Trisha, Lee's mother, sent another message to her sister Catherine that read, "Please God, will somebody help us?"
What the fuck?
Yeah. So that was the last message that Trisha ever would send. So before Trisha and Anthony left for the pub to meet her sister and husband that evening, it was just an ordinary evening like all others. But at the pub, Trisha's husband, they used to call him Tip. His name was Anthony Tipping, but they used to call him Tip. His mood changed when he received a call from Lee telling him that he'd broken down the bedroom door in anger. Tip's brother Stuart said, who's not the brother that was at the pub, that was brother-in-law, he said Tip and Trisha were so proud of their son Lee, they protected him throughout his life. Lee was really the center of their world. He could do no wrong. When Lee was 22, he went to Burnley to live at an assisted living accommodation. Even then, his parents didn't get their lives back. They worried about him every day. They were so concerned for Lee that they moved him back to their home against the advice of professionals. They were just trying to be the best parents they could. We always had a fear that Lee would take over and control Tip and Trisha's lives as they got older, but we never could have imagined he would go to the lengths he has done and take the lives of the two people who loved him unconditionally. So that's what the dad's brother said. So as a child, Lee was very solitary. He didn't play out with other kids in the village. And as he entered his teenage years, he developed a mental health condition. So when he was 19, and when he was 22, he spent time at as an inpatient on a psychiatric unit before being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He returned to the family home under the care of community mental health, the mental health team, and his parents. So for a number of years, his condition was stable. You know, he was controlling it with professional support and regular meds.
Right.
But in March 2020, he stopped taking them and he told his uncle it's time for the new Lee. And he started flushing his antipsychotic drugs down the toilet. Medical records
Always take your meds.
Yeah,
Take your meds! Take your meds!
So medical records showed he took no medication in August, September, and November. And November was when the tragic murder of his parents happened.
Wow.
So November 2021. So all this was really recent. So a former support worker who saw Lee in a pub in Preston, that's in the north of England, said he looked well, and he told her he had changed his medication. He'd even passed his driving test. It had given him freedom to go out and have his independence. He enrolled in a course to become a bouncer, like a doorman, and he was hoping to secure work at bars and festivals and made plans to attend a music college in Manchester to become a DJ. And that was his dream. So by November 2021, his mental health was deteriorating. And his teacher on his course said he looked drained and exhausted. And on November 19th, he told him to rest over the weekend and come back fresh on Monday. In court, the defendant said he had not been sleeping and knew he was becoming unwell. And this was just a few days. So his teacher sent him home just a few days before the murder of his parents. So when Tip and Trisha returned from the pub shortly after 11 p.m., Lee launched a savage attack on them. He picked up a knife from the landing and hacked away at his parents. So he attacked Anthony first, and then Trisha tried to intervene, and then Lee turned the knife on her. And he inflicted more than 300 separate injuries on his parents.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it becomes really savage because he also used a kettlebell to inflict injuries on his dad, Anthony. He then used, it gets even more extreme, an aerosol and lighter to launch a flamethrower at his dad's face. So I don't know how much of this attack was planned, but he had the knife ready on the landing. He had a kettlebell, an aerosol can, a lighter. So it seems like it was pretty premeditated.
It was thought out, yeah.
Neighbors heard Trisha screaming, "Oh no, Lee, what have you done?" at around midnight, so an hour after they got home. And the following day, when Trisha did not turn up for her regular Saturday lunch with her mother and sisters, the family raised the alarm. They called 999 at 1:43 on the 20th of November, and the couple's bodies were found upstairs in the house after police broke down a side door, but Lee was not there. Both parents had also been beaten before they died. So with Trisha suffered a black eye, a shoulder injury, and was hit repeatedly with a blunt weapon. Anthony, his dad, had been stabbed more than 130 times, including at least 65 times in the chest and 15 times in the abdomen. Anthony also suffered a number of very unusual injuries to his genitals, believed to have been inflicted after his death.
Wow.
So Trisha had been stabbed 153 times, including 67 times in the chest, 63 in the abdomen, 10 in the neck, and 3 times around the eyes. So this was like a vengeance attack.
Oh,
this was not self-defense. After he stabbed them, he washed the knife and placed it in Anthony's hands, his dad's hands, to make it look like he was the aggressor. Lee then drives to the airport to leave the country to go to Sweden. I don't know why he picked Sweden.
Wait,
I was
sorry,
curious
what?
about that.
Wait. Hold up. So he's trying to make it look like his dad stabbed his mom 153 times and then stabbed himself. And then after he died, mutilated his own genitals?
Yeah. So I don't know how well this plan was thought out. But he went to the airport to leave for Sweden, but he realized he didn't have his COVID pass. So he returned home, stepped over his mother's body to collect his laptop before leaving again. Lee saw police at the airport and then caught a taxi to a Premier Inn hotel in Manchester City, also up north in England, where he was then arrested. Lee told the armed officers that his father had attacked him, so he took the knife from him and stabbed him to death. So he did admit stabbing him. This was the beginning of a web of lies told by the paranoid killer Lee, as he tried to paint himself as the victim, and throughout the trial, Lee constructed a picture of self-pity. Now, that could very well be the case, especially after what Dee said, that often the home situation can be intolerable. That could very well be the case.
The number one reason that people kill their parents is quite often there's abuse. That abuse is not always necessarily by the parents. So,
yeah.
You know,
we know that
it
Lee
could have been from elsewhere.
Yeah, we know that Lee has a history of mental health conditions, paranoid schizophrenia. I don't always believe that they pick everything up, to be honest. Or I know that, especially with the case of autism, not that I read anything about Lee being autistic, but it's often misdiagnosed as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. So I don't always trust that the correct diagnosis has happened. He claimed his father had bullied him all his life and made cruel taunts about his mental health. He also claimed Trisha neglected him and complained they took board money from him to house him. Now, he's in his 30s, so I don't think that's unreasonable.
Rent, you mean?
But the rest, could very well be the case that he was bullied by his parents. It's possible.
Right.
So without remorse, he told the jury that he hacked at his parents with a knife. When the attack was over, he said he sat at the top of the stairs thinking, why has this happened to me? When the jury foreman delivered guilty verdicts to 2 counts of murder, Lee turned to members of the family sitting in the gallery and shouted, "You have ruined my life." 2 psychiatrists, Dr. Barlow and Dr. Baker, who examined Lee, agreed he was suffering an enduring psychotic illness with entrenched patterns of thinking, cognitive deficits, and difficulties with personal relationships. They said the paranoid schizophrenia did not substantially impair his ability to understand his actions, but may have impaired his decision-making. He wasn't taking his medication. God knows what sort of care he was getting with community care. I don't know how often a carer would have been visiting, how often he would have been having appointments. Yeah. They clearly weren't keeping close enough tabs because he hadn't been taking medication for 3 months. And that wasn't picked up on. And I would have thought a medical professional would be able to notice that.
We see all the time that this slips through the net with children. It's even harder with adults because there's very little that can be done. You can't force them to take medicine. And if he's not been violent previously, which it doesn't sound like he has.
No, didn't have a history of it.
There's very little that can be done.
He was issued with life sentence with a minimum term of 27 years. And the Right Honorable Mr. Justice Goose, which is a funny name for a judge, this is what the judge said. Before you stopped taking your medication, your symptoms were ameliorated. Afterwards, they began to return, and you realized that. In your evidence, you described that you were becoming more ill, yet you didn't seek help or take the medication you still possess. Now, I think that's kind of unreasonable, because if he's mentally unwell,
not going to make those choices.
Yeah.
Is he capable? Does he have the mental capacity to make that choice?
Right.
You know? So I feel like the judge was a bit of a dick there, to be fair. So the judge said, I'm satisfied that there's a real connection between your increasing mental illness in the months leading up to these murders and what you did. Your culpability for these offenses was significantly reduced by your mental disorder. It must be recognized, however, that you had some insight into what was happening to you. You were aware that you were becoming more ill and that it was caused by your decision to stop taking your medication. Although I accept that you did not know that it would lead you to commit murder. So that was what the judge had to say about it. But during the trial, experts picked apart Lee's lies. The Home Office pathologist, Dr. Jonathan Metcalf, said injuries to Lee's hands, which were treated in hospital following his arrest, did not bear the hallmarks of defensive injuries. More likely, he said, they were caused when Lee's hands slipped from the hilt of the weapon as the blade penetrated solid bone. Dr. Allison Armour said that many of the 131 knife wounds, including the unusual injuries to Anthony's eyes and genitals, were caused after death. And this is kind of what made me think Anthony may very well have been abused in the family home, because
if you're going after the genitals,
yeah, I don't know, it just seems like a vengeance attack where he's got a score to settle. Police body-worn camera footage captured on Lee's admission to Guild Lodge Secure Psychiatric Hospital showed Lee confessing he killed his mom as she tried to stop him leaving the house. So he killed the dad first. He said after stabbing her once, he said, I may as well go through with it now and get it over and done with. But then he continued to stab her 153 times.
Yeah, that's a little overdone with.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, this one, because he then says in the witness box, Lee admitted that his mom was, quote unquote, a lovely woman who had done nothing wrong. He said his dad was 50% a good guy and 50% nasty. I mean, Lee is now beginning a life sentence, and he must serve a minimum of 27 years before he's eligible to apply for parole. And he won't be released unless the parole board is satisfied that he no longer poses a risk, and he will be on license for the rest of his life. It feels bittersweet, like Gypsy Rose, where everything I came across did not detail any abuse in the family home, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen, you know, especially we have this campaign in the education world in the UK called Every Child Matters. After, you know, there was the baby P case where a baby was killed and the agency's social services weren't communicating with medical professionals. And there was another case, Victoria Climbier. You know, having been a teacher, I don't trust the system here. The social workers and all the different agencies that work with kids and the mental health agencies. I don't think there's enough communication. I know that school counselors don't always refer things. You know, I just feel like kids and people with needs can really slip through the net. So It feels bittersweet, this case, because he did have a mental illness. It is possible he was abused in the home, but we won't know that now. Obviously, what he did was wrong, and obviously he should be put away for that. Yeah, if it was the case that he was abused in the home and nobody intervened, or people knew and didn't intervene, this could have all been spared, like with Gypsy Rose, you know? So these are the cases that I hate the most, to be honest, when there is like an untreated mental health concern, mental health, neurological, psychological, whatever, because they're all different. I know that people people say it's mental health for everything, but it isn't. For example, you know, autism is neurological condition. Learning difficulties is a totally different thing. That's why these cases make me so sad, because you just think, had people intervened sooner?
It's all the lost opportunities.
It's that missed opportunity. He was 36, right? And he had seemingly had these issues for a while. So it's like, at what point did someone not intervene? And it's so hard to say. There's obviously an underlying issue here that had a missed opportunity. But then you see, to the extent of this crime, there was a lot going on. Think about the amount of time it had to have taken for him to inflict that many wounds.
Exactly. There was anger and
to two separate people.
Right.
Yeah, the two separate people as well. So he did it, and then did it again.
His mother may have been the lovely woman he says, but he may have also had anger towards her for maybe if the dad really was an abuser for not intervening.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like there's more there.
He was obviously getting some treatment, and his condition must have been at the level of severity that would entitle him to go and live in assisted living.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not that easy to get placed in.
Every case is never black and white, and you can just see where
And we
things
feel
could
like
have
we can
gone.
always end every episode with, is it nurture or is it nature? This
Then
is a
you're at
really
the
sad case
mercy.
because it seems like he was almost there.
What is frightening is still the lack of training on neurodiversity and mental health. I mean, I know that I received no training on autism and ADHD at all when I was training and when I was a teacher. And I know that these days training teachers only get like an hour on dyslexia. I don't even think they have training on any other kind of condition, let alone mental health. Although safeguarding has improved, the rest hasn't. And I feel like it can all be linked.
I mean, you think about a teacher is spending more like waking hours with the child a lot of times than a parent
Seriously.
is.
That's
and if
true,
they're
yeah.
not aware of these things and trained on these things and treating these and treating these kids individually for their different needs, that child is not getting what they need throughout their day. It's way worse over here. So
Oh, it makes me sad to think that it's worse because here, like I left teaching out of principle because I didn't agree with anything about it. I love special schools. I don't love mainstream schools, and I was a mainstream teacher. But to hear that it's worse in other countries, like it's just devastating.
It's pretty bad here.
we
Oh,
get
but
it.
you know what? We love you guys so much. I want to.
I know. I was going to say thank you guys so much. This was so awesome, and
It
this
has.
cannot be the last time we do this. We definitely need to do.
I
this
was going to
again.
say, is this
We
the
have to.
first of the annual collab?
Annual only. Oh my god! I can't wait another year. I was trying to think of another
I
really
picked a-
famous collaboration that people did.
No.
Stella McCartney.
Famous collaboration.
Adidas and Stella McCartney. Kanye West and Nike. But honestly, this has been so much
From
fun.
Kanye, anything.
So great.
Yeah, it really has.
It was so awesome. Thank you.
Love you guys so much.
Bye.
We love you guys. Thank
Love
you so
you.
much.
Bye.